My name is Robin Harris. My son was a victim of gun violence, and he was 2. My son's name was Romare Shakur Harris. He was very loving. He was affectionate. He always wanted to come and give you kisses and hugs. He loved to dance. He loved music. He knew his ABCs. He knew colors. My brother was said to be playing with the gun and shot my son in the head. My life now, numb. I have another baby girl, so she's 1. I have to keep pushing for her, and I have to keep pushing for Romare. Life is extremely hard. I have nightmares. It happened in my old residence. I can't go back there, so traumatized. Sometimes I just get sick out of nowhere because I just miss him that much. Life now is not the same. It'll never be the same. I'm always have to wake up in a nightmare, bad dream, no matter how many times I wake up. I have to go to my phone every day and go to the picture of him in his casket just to, reassure myself that he is gone. It's hard. There should never be a time like this where you have to lose your 2-year-old baby boy to some senseless gun violence. Please, Columbus, end the gun violence.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us here today. I want to thank Council President Hardin, Columbus City Council, Director William Scott, and the Department of Neighborhoods, Commander Smith Ware, Columbus Division of Police, Columbus Recreation and Parks, Columbus Public Health, and some of our incredible external partners such as the Columbus Urban League and Community for New Directions. They're helping with gun violence. I know that all of you covered the story of Robin Harris, but her grief didn't stop after your stories ran. The loss of Romare, just 2 years old, will be something that she carries with her for the rest of her life. That video is part of a series we're producing to tell the stories of people left behind after a loved one dies from violence. And ABC6 will be airing shorter versions as public service announcements to help end the horrible wave of homicides that we are experiencing. This past Saturday, I joined the Save Our Streets rally. I heard from mothers who have lost children to violence. Incredible stories of grief and anguish, of frustration, of fear. As I've said many times, the spike in violence is not unique to Columbus. It is being seen in every one of our peer-sized cities around the country. But this is our home. And these are the realities we as a community are facing. One of you asked me the other day what we're doing about these homicides, what we are doing now, today, that is different than yesterday. Solving this crisis is not easy. If there was a simple solution, we would have done it already. But I can tell you that we are bringing every resource available to us to stop this violence. The videos are new, as is the contract with the National Network for Safe Communities. City Council approved the $80,000 renewed criminologist David Kennedy to support the implementation of strategic interventions to reduce violence and improve public safety, minimize arrest and incarceration, and strengthen relationships between police and communities. This will start with a 6-month analysis to generate a current snapshot of who is driving serious violence in Columbus. This data will be utilized to assist in violence prevention as part of the Columbus Comprehensive Neighborhood Safety Strategy. As you all know, that strategy was developed after a record homicide rate in 2017, and it showed great results with a reduction in violence and homicides in 2018 and 2019. But what we're seeing today is a very different type of violence. You've heard me share with you before that the average age of a homicide victim last year was 37. This year it is 24. This type of violence requires a different type of approach. So our Columbus Recreation and Parks Department continues to do great work, both by using community centers for learning extension centers for Columbus City school students while they continue to learn virtually until January, as well as their intervention work with apps for at-risk youth. The current cohort of apps youth and interventionists started a We Care tour earlier this month to help fight the isolation so many families are feeling during this pandemic. They go door to door, block by block, in our opportunity neighborhoods, leaving behind simple supplies of hand sanitizer, sports equipment, and art supplies. So far, they have reached 600 families. The program will continue through the fall. The Apps youth decided on this program when it became clear that the Cap City Nights community gatherings couldn't take place amidst COVID-19. It's a small thing, but every contact, every touch point with struggling families is so important right now. In a few moments, you'll hear from Commander Smith-Ware, who will talk about the police side, including the work being done with micro-interventions. And Department of Neighborhoods Director Carla Williams-Scott is here to tell you about the progress being made with CARES Act dollars to grassroots organizations to help with our efforts. Now, I'd like to turn the podium over to my colleague and partner in this work and in our fight against violence, Council President Shannon Hardin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for being here. So I'm upset. I'm angry. Yes, as council president, but as much so as a resident, as a black man, as a person who was born and raised here. As the mayor said, this is our home. I'm upset on behalf of more than 50 kids under 16 who have ended up in the hospital or worse due to gun violence. I'm also upset that folks are choosing to commit acts of violence and in their way and throw their lives away. I think it bears repeating that if you shoot up a car full of kids, then you're going to end up dead to the streets or throwing your life away to the criminal justice system, and neither is acceptable. It's critical to put this crisis into context in this tremendously difficult year. COVID has killed almost 500 people in our city. Gun violence has killed more than 130. Both disproportionately harm black families. These are both public health calamities, and to be frank with all of you, this year sucks. This might be the hardest year that any of us lived through. Disagreements that previously may have ended with folks walking away are escalating into gunfights. This is the time when we can't just look to City Hall, but we can rely on leaders like myself with titles. This is a moment where we have to stack hands, and regardless of what your title is, regardless if it's auntie or coach or mentor, all of those leaders in our community will help us see us through this time. Council voted to expand ShotSpotter to the Near East Side because that technology helps us get guns off the streets. In partnership with the mayor and great community partners, we are launching more than 100 extension centers across the city where kids can, from kindergarten to 12th grade, can learn safely at a community center. Via the CARES Act dollars, the city has provided tens of millions of dollars to nonprofits in our city to help struggling families. But we understand that this is an unprecedented time and we all need to do more. While Director Williams-Scott and our Division of Police representatives will provide additional details about the city's efforts, I want to provide or make a pitch for what people at home can do. First, there is immense trauma in our community. The pain and stress caused by COVID and the recession are unimaginable. We need to look at short-term ways to take care of ourselves and our families as well as long-term interventions. On Tuesday, I went and voted. I voted yes on issue 24 to support our local Adam H board and to help our residents that are struggling with addiction and trauma. Second, we all were here this year. We saw May and June and July. There is lack of trust in law enforcement in certain segments of our community. When there is lack of trust in law enforcement, people take things into their own hands. When people take things into their own hands, then we see more folks getting shot. That's unacceptable. I'm hoping that this election season, our community will take a hard look at issue 2 to begin to institute accountability and restore that trust. The communities that are seeing the highest rates and having the worst impacts of this gun violence are the same communities where we have to have that trust with police and community safety. We have to have it to keep our communities safe. The COVID recession and an unemployment rate near 10%. Young folks with good jobs are safer than young folks with no jobs. That's why we need another stimulus. Folks at home, I hope will join me in encouraging Senator Portman to join Senator Brown and Congresswoman Beatty in pushing another stimulus package so we can continue to support Columbus families. Columbus, we will get through this. It may not be better tomorrow or in a week, but I promise you, we will get through this. And we will get through this together. With that, I'd like to invite the leader of our neighborhoods department, someone who's on the front lines of our anti-violence efforts, our director of neighborhoods, Director William Carliscott.
Thank you, Mayor and Council President Hardin. You just heard staggering numbers that have our city on pace for one of the most violent years in our history. 132 homicides, and we still have 2 months yet to go. We also know that many of these young people are between the ages of 0 to 21. That is unacceptable. As a mother of 2 sons, I struggle. Council President Hardin just talked about families. You saw a family torn apart by violence. Families are shattered. Neighborhoods are hurting. And with the loss of so many young people, there are birthdays that won't happen, other milestones that won't be recognized. And the saddest thing is that there were dreams that will not be recognized by these young people. This year has been like no other. We've experienced a global pandemic, families out of work, young people not in school, and that had little or no access to summer youth employment, summer camps, or extracurricular activities to keep them focused and engaged. Challenging times call for innovative efforts to make changes. To help address some of these challenges that our families and young people are facing, we have allocated funding to an effort that will focus on our families and our communities. The Youth and Family Empowerment Grants. These grants will support grassroots agencies and programming by supporting workforce readiness, family and youth empowerment, and programming in an effort to help reduce this community and youth violence. We know that there are many great community and neighborhood-based organizations that are already out here doing this work. People in our community that our young people trust. They often operate on shoestring budgets with volunteers or minimal staff and limited capacity. All of these organizations have suffered setbacks as a result of COVID-19. We want to help them with funding to operate their programs with all of the necessary protocols to keep our young people safe. In that effort, we also know that a lot of these organizations didn't have the capacity to receive city dollars. And so therefore, 4 of our trusted community organizations responded to our request to help work with these groups. They will serve as the fiscal agents and provide guidance to help our community and grassroots agencies to build capacity and ensure that we can provide services in our neighborhoods. These organizations include the Afrocentric Personnel Development Shop on the East Side, Community Development for All People on the South Side, Community Development of Caring Foundation and New Salem Baptist Church on the North Side, and the Greater Hilltop Shalom Zone on the West Side. We are focusing in our primary opportunity neighborhoods and in areas where we have seen violence. These 4 organizations have provided grants to 23 community and grassroots organizations. Groups such as Men for the Movement will employ young people from the community to do litter cleanups within 5 zip codes that cover the east and south sides. They will also place yard signs with educational and motivational messaging throughout the areas that they clean. This work will teach them the importance of healthy neighborhoods and how our surroundings can influence our behavior. The funds will provide a stipend for the young people and adult mentors, as well as allowing them to purchase the appropriate equipment and materials needed to do this work safely. Another program funded out of this empowerment grants is Think, Make, Live Youth. They will offer a 6-week program for young people and adults ages 14 to 17 and then 18 to 24. This program will provide youth and young adults with resources to help them in their current situation by providing guidance to aid in their social and emotional growth and development. We know that many of our young people are experiencing trauma. The lack of socialization in schools and other activities has them isolated. And so these programs, we hope, will help them to adapt and adjust to this. Community enrichment activities will include civic understanding, civic education, and the importance of giving back to their community. We also have to understand that these young people are our future, and if we don't prepare them now, they won't be able to take over when we're old. Westside Free Stores Ministries will support our youth and families by operating a learning extension center 2 days per week for middle and high school students. Both the mayor and Council President Hardin mentioned our learning extension centers. This learning extension center will provide a safe environment for students to engage during in their schoolwork during the day by providing internet connection, meals, and consistent, and the key word there is consistent interaction with dedicated staff and volunteers. These volunteers will be helping them to meet their mental, physical, social, and emotional needs of the students. And the primary goal is to keep the students engaged in learning and safely socializing, promoting community connectedness that is very difficult during this time of social distancing. In the Linden area, the Think, Play, Camp clinics will be investing in youth through sports and education. They will be hosting youth camps and will teach applicable life skills needed for academic and professional development. They will focus on helping students in science, health, math, and physical education during these sessions. There are many more organizations like these that I mentioned, and their focus is to meet our youth and families where they are and provide them whatever assistance they can to help weather this storm, supporting our families, engaging our young people, and healing our neighborhoods. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Commander Smith Ware, who will share what Columbus Police are doing.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Columbus Division of Police's gun violence reduction strategy, as it kind of falls under the umbrella of the mayor's and the city's overall safety plan. Earlier this summer, we put together a working group focused on youth violence and juvenile gun crime, and we presented that to the safety director's office. It was approved. As kind of a coincidence would have it, the video that you saw earlier was on the zone that I'm the commander of, and some of the officers that are attached to this juvenile working group were the first responders to that incident. So officers take this personally as well, and they're very committed to it. So we put together this group, and it's not just an enforcement arm. We're looking at different ways where we can partner with different members of the city, different community partners, to try some different ways and different avenues to reach the juveniles and the young adults who are committing a lot of the violent crimes and are also the victims of the violent crimes going on in the city. So as part of that, what we tried to do is identify at-risk youth, at-risk young adults that have been victims of and or suspects in violent crimes, gun crimes, or an escalation of felony offenses. So as we've done that, our working group has, over the past, since September 1st, through enforcement operations, seized 30 firearms and filed felony charges on 77 individuals. From those incidents and incidents connected to that, we've also made 24 referrals to our community partners and the CARE Coalition that are working with us. Commander Dennis Jeffrey and I meet weekly with the CARE Coalition and other community partners, where we talk about the past week. We go over different incidents that have happened, and we figure out ways that we can connect the people we're dealing with to different resources that in this challenging year, those services may not have been connected to them because they're not at the same place. They're not in school. They're not going through the other institutional things that we've lost during the past year. So we meet weekly to do that. So from the 24 people that we've referred, families or individuals, the community partners have made contact with 11 of them, and 7 are now have agreed and are partnering with some kind of form of a social work case management program that they're working with to try to get them out of the situations that they're in. So that's been a very positive aspect of what we're doing. Councilmember Hardin talked about ShotSpotter. We've gone over the homicide statistics daily. It seems like it's in the paper or in the news. So I think everybody's familiar with those numbers. One of the things that we're looking at, we've got 3 different zones where ShotSpotter is at currently. 2020 to date, in the Hilltop area, we have 1,100 different ShotSpotter incidents. In all of 2019, we had 1,151. So we're actually, on pace to increase that. On the South Side area, 2020 to date, 1,060 separate ShotSpotter incidents. Into all of 2019, we had 766. And then in Linden, in 2020 so far, year to date, 1,840 ShotSpotter incidents. In 2019, all of 2019, 1,284. So obviously we're seeing an increase in urban gunfire, a substantial increase in urban gunfire. Now what we know from ShotSpotter and other cities and our partner agencies across the country is that typically urban gunfire is only reported 10% of the time. So by having ShotSpotter and having that tool, we are able to catch up to probably about 80% of gunfire. Now we don't catch 80% of the suspects. We don't catch 80% of the guns all the time, but we do see an increase in gun seizures. We do see an increase in evidence that we were able to capture, whether it's video from neighborhoods, whether it's shell casings, whether it's some kind of a witness who saw something that we would not have been connected to without that ShotSpotter. We are able to do that. So that is a really important tool in our overall gun violence reduction plan. And then lastly, as was brought up last week with the press conference with U.S. Attorney Dave DeVillers, City Attorney Zach Klein, and our prosecutor Ron O'Brien, we are going to be looking at different ways that we can increase penalties and the prosecution of gun-related offenses. So we will take a look with our partners, the prosecutors in both state and federal and city, and then our investigators will be looking at what's the best avenue for prosecution when we have an investigation involving a gun offense. So there are going to be times where we increase that, moving cases over to the federal level through our partners at the ATF to do that, to prosecute it federally and hopefully get some mandatory time for a gun-related offense that will, I think, help us out in the long run. So that's it. Thank you. Excuse me.
Thank you, Commander, and thanks to Director William Scott, Council President Hardin as well. We talked about the APPS program earlier, and I'm grateful to Council President Hardin and his colleagues for committing additional dollars for more interventionists, which will help us reach more young people throughout the community. But I thought it most important for the community and for members of the media to hear directly from one of our APPS participants. I'd like you to hear from Daelon Humphreys.
My name is Daelon Humphreys. I lost a friend over the summer, very positive, encouraging me to keep doing what I'm doing and stay out the streets. The people he was hanging around with just kept pulling him into that life. Got out of jail, fixing his life, was going to do something with his life. Unfortunately, it was too late. The last words he said to me was, "I love you, be safe." And that's something I always think about, like, I don't get to hang out with my friend no more. Don't come around with nobody with a gun. It's not nothing but trouble. Streets, jail, death, not gonna get you nowhere. Don't think it can't happen, because you could always lose a person. Somebody could die in your family the next day, a week later, after you just seen them at a cookout. So don't think it could never happen, because it could always happen. I was at the funeral, I see my friend's mom, I seen her in her eyes. It hit me hard, like, dang, like, she don't get to see her baby boy walk up to that stage or hit 18. We all need to get involved to make a change. We don't need to wait for one of our loved ones is gone. And we all need to act now. Columbus and gun violence.
Be happy to take any questions from the press and ask the Commander, Director, and Council President if their time permits to stay to answer. Yes, Tom.
Mayor, you have a dollar amount on the grants that are going out that the neighborhood director announced?
Director, you have a dollar for this church?
600 and it's about 625,000.
625.
And that money came from where? Is that
The CARES Act.
Mayor?
Yes.
This may be a question
Sure.
for you, President Hardin. You talk about getting people in the community to be invested in this, to be a partner in helping to stop this violence. And we know communities of color, as you mentioned, are disproportionately affected by violence.
Certainly.
How do you expect them to trust the police to come forward with information about crimes when the message that they're getting from the council president and statements is that the division of police is systemically racist?
You know, again, I'll go back to this is a tough year for everybody. Everyone is struggling. Black, white, COVID has had its impact. There have also, outside before this year, have been historic systemic issues of mistrust with law enforcement. Not acknowledging that and not working to correct that would only cause for more lack of trust. And like I said, the neighborhoods that need this the most need to have the best relationship with the police department. And I think that we are taking steps. That's why I've encouraged folks to look at issue 2, to provide civilian oversight. We have great police officers, and good police officers want to make sure that there is independent oversight and to provide that trust in the community. So I don't see it as a either or. The mayor used to has said, and I think it's a good saying, that people are putting out false choices, that you can't support the police and ask for reform and ask for good community relations. Those are false choices, and no one's taking that bait. No one's taking that bait here.
So to follow up on that though, you are advocating people in those neighborhoods should work with police if they have issues, correct?
Certainly. This is about building trust. We are doing the things. We are working on a reform package so that folks can have that trust in policing. We have too many good police officers, but we also have to acknowledge that when a police officer acts in a certain way and needs to be held accountable. And we think that issue 2 is one of those ways. We need police in our communities. No one is saying that we don't. But we also know that this year is unprecedented. There are challenges with COVID, making connections. The tools that we normally would use to engage and to pull back violence, a lot of those tools we just don't have at our fingertips right now. We would open rec centers. We would do the engagement. We would have the Cap City Nights. All of those things also bring proximity between community and police officers. We just don't have those tools this year. And so we are leaning into a reform agenda that we hope will bring more trust in law enforcement, so that we can bring communities back together and continue to make cities safer.
I think it's important. The only thing I'd reinforce, President Hardin, is systemic racism exists. It exists in your newsroom and many of your other newsrooms. It exists in city government. It exists in corporate Columbus and in the business community. It exists in faith communities. So why would we think that it wouldn't exist within the Division of Police? It isn't that we have a huge number of actively racist officers. We know that's false. But there is systemic racism that exists there, as it does in every facet of our lives. And clearly we have an example this week where that glaring example and another reinforcement as to why civilian oversight is so important. Yes?
Spending $80,000 when we're in a budget shortfall on outside groups to study the violence, to locate those bad actors, why not reach out to the police officers who are on the streets every day and know those bad actors and deal with them every day?
Well, I think we're doing that. I think Commander outlined exactly what our strategy is there. We think this renowned criminologist can really help us figure out how we need to shift our comprehensive community safety plan to really go after this issue of youth violence that clearly is exploding and growing, and also give us some insight into how we can increase gun safety in households. I mean, there have been a number of children that have been shot this year accidentally. So what can we do around safe gun storage and other types of things? But I think it's all hands on deck. We can't solve all these problems ourselves. And having a renowned criminologist who has a track record of helping communities reduce violence, we ought to seek that help and expertise. Yes?
Mayor, we've had several press conferences like this year announcing new programs, and then we still see spikes in violence after them. What makes you think that today or these programs can really make the difference that the city needs?
Well, I don't think it's going to be any one initiative or program. And remember, in 2017, I believe we had 143 homicides. Is that right, gentlemen? 2018 and 2019, based on putting in place that comprehensive neighborhood safety strategy, we saw a great reduction in violence and homicides. We can do this. We know we can do this. But each and every one of us have a role to play. The Division of Police cannot solve this problem. They're part of our solution. But it has to have that comprehensive approach, the recreation and parks, with neighborhoods, with our council, with not-for-profit community organizations, with former gang members and folks who were actively participating in violence in the past who've turned their lives around, that can reach some of these young people in ways that, quite honestly, a council president and a mayor cannot. But it's going to take all of these things and a continued commitment to look at data and to be informed so that we can change our strategy into the future. COVID-19 is not going away. This economic crisis is not going away. And so we as a community have to decide, are our kids worth fighting for? Is this quality of life worth fighting for? And all of us have a role to play in making this city safer. Yes, Lacey.
Have you reached out to the juvenile court? A lot of times we hear these violent, youthful offenders have gone through the system again and again and again, and yet they're released and they cause more problems.
So Chief Quinlan has been in regular contact with the judges and the juvenile court system, and he is frustrated, as a number of our officers are, that sometimes you've had young people that are engaged in some levels of violence earlier in the year that have only gotten involved in more and more violence as the year has gone on. And that's why we've tried this micro-intervention approach in partnership with other community groups to see if we can catch those young people earlier and get them on the right track. We are in conversations with Franklin County Children's Services and others to see if there are other alternatives. Are there more intensive diversion programs that would be required of young people that are involved with gun violence? And so we'll be talking more about those things in the weeks and months to come. Yes.
About these extension learning centers. We saw this week with the data that there's a good percentage of students who aren't logging in for their classes so far this year. How many children do you hope to reach through these extension learning centers? And do you plan to keep them going after the new year when the transition to hybrid learning may take place?
Well, I think there are 50,000 kids in Columbus City schools. That would be my goal. That would be my aspiration. That we engage and connect with every child, not just in Columbus City schools, because as you know, there are more children that live in the city of Columbus that are assigned to suburban school districts actually than Columbus City schools, not to mention all the charter school students and ones that might be accessing the voucher program as well. So our goal is to connect with every child and to give them that in-person. We know from all the evidence that in-person instruction is best, particularly for young people as they continue to grow and develop. And so we're going to be working very closely with our district, Columbus City School District and the suburban districts, to get kids back in the classroom as quickly as possible. We know they're safer there. We know they're going to perform better. They're going to grow more developmentally and academically. It's critically important. But I also understand the grave challenges as our COVID positivity continues to grow, and trying to do the very best by the kids and the teachers. But we know this, in-person K through 12 instruction is one of the lowest risks out there that we're aware of from public health professionals and scientists, and we have to figure this out. Do you have any other questions? I'll ask the Council President, Director, and Commander if you'd stick around if any reporters have any one-on-ones. Thank you.